the 66th running of the Daytona 500 starting lineup. On row 1, it's Joey Logano on pole position in the 22 alongside Michael McDowell in the number 34. Row 2 sees Tyler Reddick in the 45 alongside Christopher Bell in the 20. Row 3 sees Chase Elliott in the 9 alongside Austin Cindric in the 2. Row 4 sees Alex Bowman in the 48 alongside Denny Hamlin in the 11. Row 5 sees Carson Hocevar in the 77 alongside John Hunter Nemechek in the 42. Row 6 sees Eric Jones in the 43, Harrison Burton is alongside in the 21. Row 7 sees Daniel Suarez in the 99 alongside Zane Smith in the 71. Row 8 sees Ty Gibbs in the 54 alongside Brad Keselowski in the 6. Row 9 sees Kyle Larson in the 5 alongside William Byron in the 24. Row 10 sees Chris Buescher in the 17 alongside Chase Briscoe in the 14. Row 11 sees Ross Chastain in the number 1, Justin Haley alongside him in the 51. Row 12 sees Jimmy Johnson back in the 84, Bubba Wallace is alongside him in the 23. Row 13 sees Ryan Preece in the 41 making his return to Daytona, Kaz Grala qualified in the 36. Row 14 sees Martin Truex Jr. in the 19, AJ Allmendinger alongside in the 16. Row 15 sees Corey LaJoie in the number 7, Josh Berry in the Sunny D car in the 4. On row 16, Todd Gilliland is in the 38, Ryan Blaney's in the 12. Row 17 sees Austin Dillon in the 3, Kyle Busch is in the 8 alongside. Row 18 sees Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in the 47, Riley Husband in the 15 alongside him. Row 19 sees Daniel Hemrick in the 31, Noah Gragson in the 10. Row 20 sees Anthony Alfredo in the 62, David Reagan alongside in the 60. Welcome to the Grid Live pre-race for the Daytona 500.
And a big hello to everyone. Welcome to Grid Live pre-race. Joe Samaniego here, along with Jackson Todd from 36X Racing. We also have Joshua Burst, who you heard with the starting lineup from Joshua Burst Motorsports, and Ben Schneider from LastCar.info and Grid Encore, home of the Daytona 500 post-race coverage. Because unfortunately, as we all know, the weather came in. We'll get into that shortly. But a big thank you to our investors, Colin Deschelle, Mark Robb, and David Matthew for keeping us on the air, helping us pay the bills. And 2024, get into the track more frequently. You want to see us at the track, invest in us, link in the video description. And you can do a one-time investment through Buy Me a Coffee or YouTube Super Chat. We'll thank you on the air as we see it occur. Jason leads the leaderboard with 2 cups of coffee and 1 Super Chat. And we encourage everyone in the chat room to participate. We see one of our regulars already have participated. Upright Fausto, good morning, goodbye. Wish I could add a conversation, but I'm busy and we'll join the race in progress. Joshua, we're excited. He's going to be watching the race in progress, but unfortunately it's going to be tomorrow because we don't have a race today.
Yeah, once again, the Daytona 500 has been postponed to Monday due to that inclement weather. Rain on Sunday morning and persistent rain all day. We had Saturday practice cancelled due to the rain as well. That was yesterday. Now everyone has to wait till Monday evening for the race to arrive. And the forecast, as you can see, does look better. So starting as well, Ben, Jackson and Joe, with only qualifying and the dual laps in, no activities Sunday, of course. What does this do to the teams and any teams you see kind of benefiting or being disadvantaged by the limited practice and laps being run?
Well, I don't know who it could possibly advantage to have less practice time or minimal practice time or no practice time at all. And only have your qualifying lap because you don't even get practice time before you go out and qualify for your biggest race of the year. And then to have the dual races is something at least. But, it's a much different environment, only half the field size that you're going to have here in the 500. I would say maybe the more experienced teams that have been here before that have more resources to begin with are less disadvantaged by the current practice situation. I think it probably hurts the smaller teams more that maybe aren't as experienced, don't have experienced personnel working behind the scenes to try to figure out what setups to put on these cars and how to handle a situation like this. I think they're the ones that might be more disadvantaged. But then again, there's also a part of me that wonders maybe if nobody has any amount of practice whatsoever like this, then maybe it's a level playing field, and some of those smaller teams might be able to use that to their advantage in many respects as well. So I would say, just to sum it all up, it's probably more of a wild card than anything. But I think it really reinforces the idea that, especially for the biggest race of the year, to go out and have your first laps be your time trials to set the starting lineup for the duels, or to set the front row for the 500, or to determine who might or might not make the race. I think we need to bring some amount of practice back. Maybe not have the 6 or 7 practice sessions we used to have back in the day. Maybe that was a little overkill, but there has to be some sort of medium between that and the absolute no practice that we're having now.
Yeah, I see if I had to pick one specific group that's at a disadvantage with this no practice time, it would be Legacy Motor Club, just because they're having to switch to Toyota, and that's a new venture for them. But other than that, there's not really like a new team on the grid. Even our inexperienced drivers in this race, I mean, Carson Hocevar, Zane Smith, Kaz Gralla, Josh Berry, those aren't inexperienced drivers to like super speedway racing. So I think, yeah, just generally I would like to see more practice, but it's hard to pick a specific advantage or disadvantage for this race in particular.
One of the things I'm looking at potentially as an advantage is looking back at the dual races. I think some of the Toyotas, particularly Tyler Reddick, Christopher Bell, they always seem to run pretty good here. They were running really good. As you mentioned, Ben, though, that was a different atmosphere. And we're going to have different conditions. A green racetrack, granted, assuming the weather all cooperates, we'll have some rubber from the Xfinity Series. It's going to be cooler, so the track's going to have that more grip. Handling shouldn't be too much of an issue. I think if Tyler Reddick and Christopher Bell continue to have strong, fast cars and stay up front, it'll be hard to beat. And then the one thing I started thinking about too is, if that occurs, we could start to see potentially, we've seen this before, that high line on the outside of the wall, single file, all the cars going max out. If you have 2 Toyotas up front, you get 2 more and you got 4. I could see that being a potential benefit, but it's way too chaotic. I think this is still, nobody's coming into Monday thinking, hey, this is in our favor. Everyone's now talking about what should we do? Who should we look after? Because who's going to be fast? Who's going to be slow? I think Christopher Bell, Tyler Reddick might be some of the fast ones on Monday.
Well, the 2023 Cup Series champion Ryan Blaney, of course, crashed in the duel and went to a backup car, now entering the Daytona 500 with no laps to prepare that car as well. According to Jim Hutzer from motorsport.com, 55G is experienced when Blaney hit the wall as well. It's a 55G impact as well. Unbelievable to hit that wall. It was a big hit, of course, most of the field getting taken, some damage in the big one that happened at the tri-oval. Now, we'll get into the safety and potentially big one later on in the program that could happen in the 500. But for Blaney, I have to ask, the chances of a 500 victory, are they out of the window, or is this part of the master plan to go from last to first?
I think I'll count this as part of the master plan. I think it's really hard to see a super speedway race and not see Ryan Blaney as a contender. I think there's a lot of good vibes in the Blaney camp coming off of the championship, despite a few hard hits at Daytona recently. We'll see when we get to pick a winner, but I'm feeling good about Ryan Blaney this week.
Yeah, I'm sure taking a 55G impact wasn't part of the master plan from the start, so I don't know that I'd go that far here, but I would say that, look, it's a super speedway race. It's a 500-mile super speedway race. There's going to be plenty of time for him to figure out how his car's handling and maybe hang out at the back for a little while. And if the field looks like it's getting 2 or 3 wide and a little crazy, and he anticipates we might see the big one in the first stage. I know stage racing makes it difficult to justify staying at the back of the pack all day long like some drivers used to do back in the day. But, the reality of it is, if the goal is to win the Daytona 500, you get into the playoffs with that straight away at the start of the year anyway. So I don't know that stage points are necessarily as much important as some people might make them out to be in that respect either. So, I think there's plenty of time for him to strategize, plenty of time for him to work his way up through the field. I would certainly not count out Ryan Blaney, my number 12 team, from maybe this finally being the year that he wins the Daytona 500.
Now, I've been scouring my notes. I can't actually see what the furthest back a driver has won from as well. I know that races won from pole position or the first time position has been 26 out of the 65 races run. So it's quite a good margin there. But in terms of how many people have won from the back of the grid here, I'm not too entirely sure about that. But Ryan Blaney will be at the back of the field in that backup car. Joey Logano, his teammate, will lead the field to green in the 22 Shell Pennzoil Ford Mustang as well. As I just said, 26 times here at Daytona, a winner has come from pole position in 153 races in total. So it's a pretty good stat to be there as well. He made it through Drill 1 without any issues, despite the racing having one caution. Joey has won the Daytona 500 before with Roger Penske, and surprisingly, this is Team Penske's first time having the pole at the Daytona 500. In the past, Chevrolet's controlled the front row, especially Hendrick Motorsports and Alex Bowman, with a streak of 4 front row starts. That all ended Wednesday when Ford swept the front row. So Ben, starting with you on this one, is this a good sign that the new Dark Horse Mustang is fast and a step ahead of the others?
Yeah, I think it was actually 6 front row starts for Bowman. He had a streak going from when he took over Dale Jr.'s ride in 2018. He had never been outside of the front row. And then, it didn't all go to complete disaster for Hendrick. They still had 3 of their cars up in the top 6, like we were talking about on the dual pre-race show on Thursday. But Bowman was a little bit further down the field. Now he's back up again based on where he finished in his duel. But as for Team Penske and, Ford and that manufacturer, obviously, you've got Michael McDowell up there on the front row as well. That was a surprise to me. The fact that they were going to be the ones to take down the Chevrolet Hendrick empire here at Daytona 500 qualifying to be that fast out of the gate and break that front row starting streak for Alex Bowman. It's certainly a sign that they have strong speed in that car. But again, I'll also point out the caveat that for all the talk that Hendrick Motorsports gets on qualifying day, they have not won this race in 10 years. The last time that they actually won the 500 was with Dale Earnhardt Jr. in 2014. So just because you have a fast car or a fast lineup of cars, as Hendrick has had the last several years, it doesn't always necessarily lead to success in the actual race itself. So that's something else to keep an eye on tomorrow.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. Daytona qualifying is kind of out here, I feel like, on its own little island. But I went through the 3 years of next-gen Daytona 500 qualifying, and year over year between the three, I looked at the best qualifying effort of each of the 3 manufacturers, and the best driver, the difference is only a few hundredths of a second. But Ford chopped about 4/10 of a second off of their qualifying speed from last year, so that's certainly a good sign going forward. It's never a bad sign to be fast. And I mean, we'll see how it works out in race conditions, but they at least brought the speed for sure.
Now, Ben, you mentioned about Dale Earnhardt Jr. as well. He was the last driver here at the Daytona circuit back in the 2015 May race to win from pole position. However, Joey Logano is trying to be the first driver since Dale Jarrett in the 88 Ford back in 2000 to win the Daytona 500 from pole position. Jackson, starting with you, can it be done?
I think it can definitely be done. I think not only is Logano the guy to do it, but I think this next gen car, I think it's hard to pass. It's hard to make moves in the next gen car on these super speedways. I think that's a little easy to forget. I mean, Ross Chastain won that Talladega race in 2022, basically just by minding his business and not making a move coming to the line. So I think track position is very important. Obviously, there's a lot of 500 miles for things to happen, but it's a really good starting spot for a reason.
Yeah, just because it hasn't been done in a while doesn't mean it can't be done. And as we all know, the nature of super speedway racing, I think anybody that has the speed to hang in the draft and knows how to make those moves at the end of the race, as Joey Logano certainly does, he's a former 500 winner himself to begin with. Absolutely, I think it's certainly a possibility. And then you factor in, the guy starting alongside him on the front row has won this race with him the last 3 years. His teammate, Austin Cindric, has won this race with him the last 3 years. So again, this is the first time in a while we've actually seen Ford and Penske take the fight to Hendrick and Chevrolet in qualifying. But in terms of the race, the last several years in particular, they have certainly been threats to be up front towards the end of the race when it matters most.
26 times, as I said, the race has been won here at Daytona from the front row across all of the races we've ever held here, which is 153. Now, Joe Samaniego has found the stats for the furthest back win. He's put it in the script in front of me, so thank you, Joe, for that. Because since the 2000 Daytona 500, nobody from the front row has won the Daytona 500. Last year's winner, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., came from 31st position. Now, Matt Kenseth has the record of starting 39th, but going to 43rd with a backup car and winning the Daytona 500. That's the furthest ever back the race has been won. 7 times a driver has won from 30th or worse in the Daytona 500. Joe, again, amazing stats to find there. But Ben, starting with you on these, what are some of the key? What are some of the keys for someone 30th or worse to win this race? What do they have to do to sort of get up there at the end of 500 miles?
Well, again, it was a lot simpler in the pre-stage racing era. I think a lot of drivers would just say, let's mind our business, take the first half of the race or so to figure out how our car's handling and formulate a plan for working our way up towards the front. It's much more difficult to justify doing that now with the advent of stage racing. But, you will still have some drivers. AJ Allmendinger is an example. He's back full-time in Xfinity this year running for points, but he's still running a limited schedule for a colleague in the Cup Series. I don't think he's starting quite that far back, but I'm just the first example that came to my mind of somebody not running for Cup points who doesn't have to worry about that. He can maybe justify taking it easy in the first half of the race a little bit more because he doesn't care about points. He's just going for the win, and that's all that really matters to him and his team, although I guess the 16 could maybe use some owner's points there, but that's a whole nother discussion for another time. I think the biggest thing is obviously, you want to do everything you can to minimize the trouble that you might find yourself in. Again, it's easier said than done when you get on a super speedway like this, particularly in an era where we've seen drivers be more aggressive. We've seen the big one, as you mentioned, Josh, happen in the early parts of the race, a couple of times in the last several years. So, it's going to be a difficult ask given the current era of stage racing that we're in. But as Adam says down there in the chat as well, that's the biggest thing you can try to do is just stay out of trouble as much as possible. And again, understandably, sometimes it's not possible to do because you're in the front. You can get caught up in an accident not of your own doing. And the same goes if you're hanging out at the back of a draft, just with the nature of this kind of racing. But don't do anything stupid in the first 4 laps like we saw in the ARCA race or the truck race on Friday night. And again, more on that on Grid Live Encore here in the next couple of days. That's what you don't want to do. And that's what you would hope that drivers who have made it to the Cup level, who are a little bit more experienced, will recognize and take their time and avoid a situation like that in the first stage of the 500.
Yeah, definitely patience, especially early, maybe not going for those stage points. Another thing I want to look at are the green flag pit stops. If your pit group can jump another pit group, that is several positions on the track. You don't have to be aggressive in a pack and try to negotiate through. Clean entry on a pit road can make up some positions. Obviously, no mistakes on pit road, and then a clean exit with your pack. And then, of course, managing the merge as these different pit cycles come together on the track. I think that's a spot to make up some ground for some guys starting in the back. And I mean, of course, has been talked about, you got to have patience and then trying to mind your business and stay out of the big one for sure.
And if I could just follow up, I just pulled the lineup again on the side of my computer screen here. Allmendinger starting 28, so he's right in that range. And Riley Herbst and Anthony Alfredo are in a similar situation. They're not running for Cup points anyway, so they can certainly justify hanging out at the back for the first 2 stages and then start planning their moves in the final stage.
Absolutely, and I'm personally picking as well. Look at Josh Berry in the number 4 car. We all saw what he could do last year as well. He was just debutizing as well. Yes, he's starting further back, but I've got a feeling he'll be in the mix towards the end as well. If we're judging what we saw in the duels, overtaking, he seems to be okay keeping that low line as well. And he was causing a bit of mischief early on.
Thank you, Josh. And now we'll move along here and let's talk about the manufacturer conversation here a little bit. Toyota, I know, wants to break the tie that it currently has with a couple of older manufacturers, Buick, Pontiac, Oldsmobile, and Mercury, each with 3 Daytona 500 wins. A win will, of course, move them to a tie with Plymouth and Dodge with 4 500 wins. Now, in the duels, we saw Toyota come up towards the front and run well. Tyler Reddick and Christopher Bell, of course, both won their duels, which means in terms of race pace, there's no sign of those speed issues like we were talking about in single car qualifying. So, Jackson, we'll start with you. Do you see a Toyota in victory lane tomorrow? And if so, which driver do you think from their lineup is the most likely to win?
I think I'm a pretty good shot that a win is going to come from Toyota. You have some really, I mean, obviously winning both dual races is a good way to keep the week going. I think my first instinct is to go to Denny Hamlin, but also the race is on a Monday. Mondays have been dominated by Martin Truex Jr., so you have to throw him in the discussion. If I had to pick one driver, though, I feel like Denny Hamlin. I feel like he is after the clash, he's throwing everything out, not throwing everything out the window. He's going all out. And I think Denny Hamlin getting a fourth Daytona 500 is definitely in the cards tomorrow.
Denny Hamlin has to be one of the favorites. I'm also looking at Bubba Wallace. Finished second place here a couple times. He's always fast. The big thing in the past, Toyota, their weakness has been strength in numbers. Fewer Toyotas compared to Ford, Chevrolets. Now we got 3 more Toyotas with Legacy Motor Club. You got Jimmy Johnson there, Eric Jones. Eric Jones has won at Daytona before. John Hunter Nemechek, I think, is a sleeper. He could easily, I think, have a good race, help out his teammates. I feel Toyota is in a really good position, probably one of their best positions to win the Daytona 500. As you mentioned, Jackson, with what we saw at the duels from Tyler Reddick, Christopher Bell. They're very fast. And as I mentioned, my first answer earlier, that if you could get 4 or 5 Toyotas single file, I think they're going to put a lot of distance on everyone. As you brought up about the pit stops, especially under green flag, that disadvantage is gone compared to years past. And I think this is Toyota's best bet at getting the Daytona 500.
Yeah, well, I guess Hamlin in particular, he's got all 3 of those wins for Toyota, 2016, 2019, and 2020. So still looking for a Toyota driver not named Denny Hamlin to win this race. Maybe this will be the year somebody like a Bubba Wallace or Tyler Reddick for 2311, or maybe somebody from Legacy Motor Club will get up there and surprise some people. Now, let's talk about that team. Obviously, as Jackson mentioned, a manufacturer switch in the offseason from Chevrolet over to Toyota. Jimmy Johnson is the first Hall of Fame member for NASCAR to qualify for the Daytona 500 post-induction. We know he didn't run full-time in any series last year after going full-time in IndyCar in 2022. Ran a handful of Cup races last year, but had to withdraw from Chicago after a tragedy in the family. Last year's first year as a Legacy Motor Club co-owner with Richard Petty was pretty forgettable, all things considered. Now the team is looking to take a step forward with Toyota, and Jones, Nemechek, and Johnson are 3 cars strong in the field for Legacy MC. So, Joe, what would a good day for this team look like? And does Johnson in particular need a strong race to feel like a rebound from last year and, let's be honest, the last several years of his career?
A strong race would be feeling like a great rebound for the last several years. I mean, even 2020, the retirement year, didn't go as planned. I feel like it's just been from such a stellar career to just not the most memorable goodbye, transition to part-time. Last year, a lot of hype. As soon as they announced they were switching to it, it just seemed the support from Chevrolet was completely gone. I think if he could get a good run, honestly, this is going to sound weird to say, if he could finish in the top 10, I think he's going to see that as a good day. I never thought we'd be saying Jimmy Johnson wants a 10th place finish and call it a good day, but where they've been through, and as a team and organization, that could build a momentum for, okay, we got Atlanta next weekend, we could win there. If they could get another strong performance, now it's a mile and a half. Toyotas are pretty good, and honestly, if Legacy Motorsports were to get a win in the next 2 race weekends, I think Toyota will really be like, okay, you're in the playoffs, we're going to really help you out now. So I think this is a big opportunity for Legacy and Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah, not that Jimmy Johnson has anything to prove. I think he's here he's some drafting help for Toyota, he's some drafting help for Legacy Motor Club. I think he's there to have a good time. And I think trying to put, more pressure on it than that is tough. He's proven what he needs to prove. In terms of Legacy Motor Club as a collective, I think a good day is leading some laps. I think you want to try to get Eric Jones some stage points today. Starting these first 2 weeks on the super speedways, I think the most critical thing for someone at Legacy Motor Club's level is you got to keep Eric Jones in the playoff bubble area at least coming out of these first 2 weeks. Because if they're starting from behind, it's going to be a long 20-some races to the rest of the regular season. So I think a good day is staying at least top 20 in the regular season points coming out of this week.
Well, the last time that the 43 won the Daytona 500, it was 1981 with Richard Petty. The last time the 42 won the 500 was 1959, the very first 500 with Richard's father, Lee. Now, both of those numbers are in the top 12. They could surprise tomorrow, along with some other surprises we've got starting up in the first 6 rows. Carson Hocevar, Austin Cindric, and Harrison Burton, as you can see on screen, all have top 12 starting positions themselves. Jackson, which other drivers do you think could surprise with a top 5 or perhaps even a win tomorrow?
I think just talks about Eric Jones. I think he's someone that could slip up into the top 5. I'm also looking at the duo of Harrison Burton and Austin Cindric. I liked what I saw from them at the end of the duel, and I could see them making a run at the end if they're able to hang around. I'd say those are kind of my 3 to keep an eye on.
For me, looking at the 3 drivers I'm thinking of, I'm looking at Carson Hocevar. I think he could really run a smart race, impress a lot of people. We've seen him run pretty good in the past. I think he's learning a lot in the Cup Series with each and every start, and I think he'll put together a smart race. He'll be up towards the front. Overall, Austin Cindric, he knows how to win here. I think he could have a really good stellar day. And John Hunter Nemechek is just one driver I've just been watching. I'm starting to think he could really surprise people. I think he is going to be capable of finishing up towards the front.
All right, well, let's get to our lightning round here. I understand Jackson has several questions for our entire team, so I'll hand it over to him.
All right, welcome to the lightning round, everybody. Make sure to participate in the chat. Let us know what you think and submit some extra questions if you'd like as well. All right, let's start by talking about Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Joe, Ben, Josh, is Stenhouse winning top 5, top 10, top 20, or finishing somewhere outside the top 20?
I say outside the top 20. He seems to win or crash. I think he's going to crash outside top 20.
I'm going to go with the top 10. I think he's going to find a way to survive towards the end there, but it's very hard to go back to back in this race. But that JTG Doherty team, they always seem to find a way to pull out a good result on these super speedway races. I'm going to say top 10, but nothing more than that.
I'll say top 20, but with an emphasis that he'll be involved in one of the cautions as well. As Joe said, it's either win or bin it. So I think he'll try and bin it and then take out a couple of others.
I'm feeling like a Stenhouse top 10 is reasonable. I'll go with you, Ben. All right, next question. Which team is going to have a better finish today, Front Row or Stewart Haas Racing? 2 of those kind of next step down Ford teams. Ben, we'll start with you.
Well, I don't know Front Row's next step down team anymore. I think based on how Stewart Haas ran last year, I would say Front Row is maybe ahead of them at this point with how strong Michael McDowell's taking that team. And by the way, just heard this week that apparently Love's signed a multi-year deal to come back and sponsor that team. They've been signing 1-year deals ever since their relationship began. So that shows the kind of investment that they're willing to put into this team right now. But then you factor in the fact that Stewart Haas Racing is a very young and inexperienced driver lineup. Michael McDowell's former winner of this race starting on the front row, ironically, in a front row car. I'm going to go with Front Row Motorsports and specifically Michael McDowell. I think he gets the best finish.
Yeah, kind of took my answer there as well, because we were talking about it in the Grid Tonight show. Stewart Haas Racing have been having just horrible press, horrible times of it. They're looking completely disorganized as well. So I don't think they're going to do very well in the first race. They're going to take a couple of races sort of just to bed in. So I think Front Row are going to, I think as well, we're going to see Michael McDowell do something special. I mean, he was doing quite well in the duels until he got a little bit of a tap, got sent up high, then decided, okay, I'll just drop back and save the car. But he was looking good in the drafts.
I'm going Front Row, Michael McDowell, and I'm not counting out Todd Gilliland. I think he could have a strong run too.
And Kaz Gralla. You got an open card there as well.
Yeah, I'm definitely taking Front Row on this one as well. All right, let's talk about Joe Gibbs Racing. 4 JGR cars. Where will Ty Gibbs finish among those 4 cars, Josh?
I've got a feeling he'll be the top of them, and I'm thinking overall he might be inside the top 10. I think he's going to have quite a good race as well, judging by what we saw. I'm going optimistic.
I'm going to go behind Hamlin, but ahead of Bell and Truex, so he'll be the second fan. I think he's going to have a stellar day.
I'm going to just give you the entire lineup, I guess. I'll go Hamlin, Bell, Gibbs, and Truex. I know Truex is a champion and one of the all-time greats, future Hall of Famer. I don't think that he's necessarily the greatest super speedway racer. It's compared to his performance on other types of tracks. Of course, he did very nearly win this race in 2016. Denny Hamlin just edged him out. But I think, I'm reminded of the year that Gibbs was up. I think that was 2019. Denny Hamlin won. Kyle Busch was up there with Eric Jones as well. And Truex was the one that got caught up in one of the big wrecks. So I think Gibbs will finish ahead of Truex, but behind his other two teammates.
Wow, I'm kind of surprised with you guys. I feel like Ty Gibbs is at the bottom of my ranking. Honestly, maybe of Toyota as a whole in terms of super speedway racers, but I guess we'll see. All right, keeping in the Toyota category, let's talk about 2311. Tyler Reddick, Bubba Wallace. Who's having a better finish between those two, Joe?
I'm going Bubba Wallace. I think he's going to have a standout, typical Daytona performance, be up towards the front.
I was really surprised as well at Bubba because I was expecting him to have a little bit of a shaky start in the duels, but he kept his nose clean. He actually got taken out in that crash, not of his own accord. He had nowhere else to go. And up until then, he was doing really well in the drafts. He was being methodical. He was side by side for a lot of times with Berry as well, and it was good, clean racing. Looks like I'm just seeing a little bit of a change in attitude towards him coming into this year. So I'll think Bubba Wallace will have a better finish in that 23XL car.
His teammate won the duel. I got to go with Tyler Reddick on this one. I know Bubba Wallace is a great super speedway racer, but Tyler Reddick didn't have a lot of speed this year, and or at 500 this year, I should say. We'll of course see what happens later on this season as we get into the heart of it. But I'm just going to go with Reddick.
Interesting. I think I'm going to go on Team Bubba on this one. They had some really good momentum to end last season, and he's definitely. I think the Toyota pack is going to be really strong. I could see him leading it. All right, next question. Alex Bowman, not on pole this year. Is he still going to be able to lead a lap in this race, Ben?
Well, let's see. He's got 200 chances to do so, and he's still starting relatively towards me. Yeah, I'm going to say yes, and I think he will lead multiple laps, as a matter of fact, in that 88 car. Or 48 car, excuse me.
200 scheduled laps, not counting overtime, more opportunities.
That's true.
I think he's not. I just think he has not been that stellar out of the Hendrick bunch. I say no, he won't.
He's led 42 here at Daytona, so he's got a good chance, knows how to lead it. I'd say yes, because it's a yes or no answer. I'd say yes, given what we're seeing.
I think I'm going to go with a yes. All right. Josh Berry, first start in the number 4 car. Is he going to be able to finish in the top 10? Josh?
Yes, judging by what we've seen in the duels as well, he can pack race, and he's been drafting quite well. He got shuffled back a couple of times as well. He's going to. It's his first full season, so he's in the Cup Series. He's going to get elbowed back a little bit by some of the more experienced lot, but I've got a feeling that keep your nose clean, have a good strategy, maybe benefit with yellow pit stops over green pit stops. So fingers crossed it might go well. So I'm going to say yes, he does.
I wouldn't put it past him. I think he's got the skill set necessary, but I want to stay consistent with where we kind of think Stewart Haas is right now compared to front row, especially. That was one of the earlier questions in this lightning round. I'm going to say he doesn't, but I'm not putting it past him either. It's just my prediction that he'll be outside the top 10 by the end of the day.
I just got the idea that Stewart Haas Racing, if they could survive a chaotic race, they could be in the top 10. But if we don't get a chaotic race, I think they're going to be outside the top 10. So I'm going to vote no. He'll be outside the top 10.
Yeah, I think I have to go no on this one as well. There's way too many strong names at Super Speedway Racing that can go above Josh Berry at this point of things. All right, big one. It's going to happen at some point. Stage 1, Stage 2, or Stage 3. Where is it going to happen, Joe?
I think it's going to be Stage 2. Stage 1, I think everyone's going to be just trying to settle it in. Stage 2, they're going to get aggressive. That's when mistakes will happen. Stage 2.
I would hope that the Cup Series field would be a little bit more mature than that of a Truck Series or the ARCA Menards Series. But based on how this weekend's going, I'm going to say Stage 1. And I think it's going to be early in Stage 1, too. I think somebody's just going to make a late block or make an ill-advised move trying to change lanes or something, and unfortunately, I hope I'm wrong. I hope it doesn't happen. But based on how recent trends have gone, based on how this weekend has gone so far, based on the minimal practice that we've had, I think it's going to be Stage 1.
Okay, I see your point for that. And also, lack of grip, green track, Stage 1, first time all the cars pack racing. I can see the benefit for that, where we might see a big one. Someone just getting a little loose coming out of 2 on the backstretch. Adam says stage 3 for the big one and someone flips. I was thinking somebody flips, but I'm also thinking realistically it's going to be stage 2. Sunset around about 6:30 as well. Light coming down. Still only running, 60 odd laps on that. First stage is 65 laps, so not much rubber going down. Sun setting, cooler track. I've just got the feeling that round about sunset, stage 2, we'll have somebody go around causing the big one.
Well, we will have the Xfinity race, hopefully. We'll see. I'm seeing the weather might still even be a little bit wet into Monday morning, but they'll lay a little bit of rubber down before that as well. So I see what you're saying, Josh, about it being a relatively green track, but they will at least get that race in, hopefully, before the 500, and that'll help a little bit, I think.
Josh, I appreciate you predicting the location of the sun of when the big one's going to happen. I think it's going to happen in stage 2. I think everyone's going to be chill in stage 1, and then remember that they're in the Daytona 500 in stage 2. All right, Denny Hamlin, Mr. Speeding on pit road. Is there going to be a Denny Hamlin pit road speeding penalty today, Ben?
There will be. But it will be towards the beginning of the race because Denny Hamlin is going to be my pickle winner. I'm sorry to spoil it for everybody. I think you might have been able to tell that that was where I was trending based on my predictions for Gibbs and Toyota. But I never bet against Denny Hamlin when it comes to the end of these races. He's won 3 in a 5-year span with Toyota and Joe Gibbs Racing. He is prone to speed on pit road, but I think it's going to happen early enough in the race that he'll be able to recover from it and work his way back up towards the front by the end of it.
I'd say yes, mainly because I don't think he's going to lead a lap, because looking at the stats, he's led 666 on a weekend which has already been pretty cursed. So I don't think it's going to be quite his way. And drivers are superstitious. He would know that stat. He'll know this weekend. And he has been speeding on pit road quite a lot. So I'll go, yes, he will. And I'll go, he won't do anything else. He'll just be sort of having a bit of a lackluster race. I'm
going to predict yes. It's going to happen, I think, during a green flag pit stop where you're trying to rush in, and that's going to be costly. So I'm firm, yes, he will, and I think it could ruin his race if he loses that draft and goes a lap down.
Ben, I think I'm going to follow you on this one. I see a stage 1 pit penalty and then like a rebound throughout the day. I see the vision. All right, last year we had 52 lead changes. Are we going to see more or less this year? Ben, we'll start with you.
I think we're still going to see a lot of action up front, and I don't know, 52, that's a very high bar to be set. I'm going to take the under on that. I'm going to say there are going to be fewer lead changes in this year's race.
I'm going under too. I just think the nature of the track with the weather and everything and the lack of practice, I'm saying under.
Yeah, I'm going the same under as well. And just for the fact how quick Joey Logano was in quali, 181 mile an hour, if he hits the front and stays in the front, he's got a little bit more advantage. I think we're going to see quite a side-by-side race, but it's the pace through the corners. If Logano goes low, he can drag a bit quicker. So I've just got this feeling we're not going to see as many lead changes as we're going to expect.
Yeah, I feel like an under is the right call here. 52, that's a lot of lanes going back and forth. I think today it could be more single file action. All right, a final lightning round question. Kyle Busch, Brad Keselowski, Chase Elliott. Those are 3 champions that have not won the Daytona 500. Which of those 3 is going to get a better finishing result tomorrow? Josh, we will start with you.
Oh, it's hard, isn't it? Kyle Busch was going so well and it all faded away. And Brad Keselowski was sort of started well, but then got kicked back quite early on the drills. I'll go Chase Elliott. Third on the list. I've gone through this quite mathematically. I'll say Chase Elliott has a better finish tomorrow in the 500.
I think you have to go with Chase Elliott. I think this could be a good opportunity for him to get that win. I'm going with Chase Elliott.
I'm going to go with Kyle Busch. I think he's going to come close once again to winning this race, but I think it's going to elude him for yet another year, but he will get the best finish out of those 3.
I am surprised that nobody picked Brad Keselowski, who's an icon of this era of super speedway racing and has been in the picture at Daytona last year. I think I got to go with Brad Keselowski. All right, so that wraps up our lightning round. Thanks everybody for playing along with us. So we just talked about Kyle Busch. He is one of 6 former champions that have not won a Daytona 500. Let's talk about him a little bit more. Last year with Richard Childress Racing, he was leading as the race hit the 500-mile mark, but did not get it done in overtime. He won 3 races last year and made it to the round of 12 in the playoffs. Now with RCR, he's a little bit more popular. He's driving the mostly black car. You can't not think of Dale Earnhardt with Richard Childress Racing. Here we are at Daytona, 20 years for Kyle Busch. How big of a story is it going to be if Kyle Busch wins, and where would we put this on his career resume, Ben?
Well, the first thing I have to say is it would be even better if he was in the 3 car. And again, no disrespect to Austin Dillon on a personal level or anything like that, but I do think if there's anybody at that team right now that it would be more fitting to be in that 3 car based on how his career has paralleled Dale Earnhardt's in many respects. I think it would be fitting if Kyle Busch had the number 3 right now, although it would be hilarious reading some of the Facebook comments on post announcing that. I think that wouldn't go over too well with a certain demographic of NASCAR fans, but no, it would be absolutely huge, for Kyle to win this race tomorrow. Now, I guess it'd be even cooler, I guess, if we didn't have the weather today and he was doing it, on the anniversary of Dale Sr.'s passing here. But, I think that there's a lot there. Kyle obviously, has done so much in his career. The one thing he hasn't done in this sport is win the Daytona 500. And, there has to be an immense amount of pressure on him at this point in his career, knowing that he's closer to the end of his career than the beginning, to get this final weight off his shoulders. And again, like he tweeted last year, it's a shame it wasn't 1998, because if we were racing under those rules, he crossed the finish line at mile number 500. Overtime didn't exist yet. We'd be talking about him as a Daytona 500 champion. So I think, to answer the question, I don't know if there's a bigger storyline that could come out of this weekend than a 2-time champion. What is he up to now? 63 Cup wins. It's right there on the screen for me here. He has had an absolutely outstanding career. Not just in the NASCAR Cup Series, but on the ownership side with his truck team, just until it closed down this recent off season. There's so many accolades to his career. This would be the absolute capstone of it if he could get this win tomorrow.
If he gets this win, I think this will be a popular win amongst fans, because they've seen Kyle pretty much do everything he could do at Xfinity, at trucks, at Cups, the championships, everything he's done. He's still going to be polarizing, but I think similar to how in 1998, a lot of fans were just happy to see Dale Earnhardt finally get that Daytona 500. I think people will just be thrilled to see Kyle Busch finally got that Daytona 500. And I think that would really mean a lot for his career, but also when you compare him to other drivers, because it's still one of the biggest shocks to me still is Tony Stewart never won the Daytona 500. You have so many drivers that come close, never got it. If Kyle Busch could get that, I feel like he'll feel complete with his career. As you mentioned, Ben, coming more towards the end of career, Kyle Busch, I think it'll be a popular story all across NASCAR, the industry, and potentially even outside news sources will pick it up for what he's done in his career and finally winning the Daytona 500.
It's a question of immortality, isn't it, as well? To win a race like Le Mans, Indy 500, Monaco, it's those names that you always remember. And for a driver like Kyle Busch, who hasn't won on so many attempts, he's been second best, the bridesmaid to the greatest spectacle in racing, the Great American Race, you've just got to get there and go one step further. Now, if he can do it, it'll be the perfect wrap-up for his entire career. It's the one thing missing. And it is the key to immortality for a racing driver, to have your name on one of the biggest racing trophies in history. So I'm thinking, if he can do it, I won't be too surprised if at the end of the year he goes, I've done the 500, I've got all the championships, got all this, I'm very successful and all that. That's it, I'm done. I'll retire. That's it. And so it's kind of like that. It's kind of like when you get something, a bit like how in Formula 1, Fernando Alonso, he's going on because he wants more wins. He wants another world championship. If he got another win in another world championship, he'll probably retire, because the push, the older you get, it's not about if you lose it or you can't train as harder. It's the drive to do something, to get something you haven't had. And if he's now got that, he'll start to think, what am I really doing this for? So I think it's the key to immortality.
Yeah, definitely. This definitely would be another kind of a bow on the career of Kyle Busch. Not that this is the last step, but it would certainly be a nice addition, cherry on top. The sports books definitely seem to favor Kyle Busch. He has the best odds of the Chevrolet drivers at plus 1,000 to win. Favorite this weekend, plus 800, Denny Hamlin, a three-time 500 champion. Joey Logano leads the Ford drivers. He is in the top 20 here, listed. These are the DraftKings odds from this morning. Long shots all the way down at the bottom. Anthony Alfredo, Kaz Grala, Riley Herbst, Daniel Hemrick, and Todd Gilliland are all at plus 10,000. Of course, make sure if you're betting, play responsibly and never bet more than you can afford to lose. I know a few guys that I'm looking at here. I mean, you got Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney at the top. But I think someone that Christopher Bell down a little bit, and that next year down is someone to look at with some good odds. Denny Hamlin going into this race, if he wins, he will break the tie with Bobby Allison, Dale Jarrett, and Jeff Gordon as three-time winners. He would join Cale Yarborough as the second four-time winner, only behind Richard Petty with 7 career wins. All of them are Hall of Famers. Is Denny Hamlin on a Hall of Fame trajectory? Is he running out of time to win more Daytona 500s? Josh?
100% he is a future Hall of Famer. I think we can't deny that. If we're saying Martin Truex Jr., then you've got to throw in Denny Hamlin as well. And to win more Daytona 500s, is his time running out? I would say possibly, yeah. It's the same reason as I said about Kyle Busch, but it's a different mentality because Denny Hamlin's got the 500 victories, he's got everything else, and he's just sort of like, he's sort of very happy and enjoying what he's doing. So it's not the will to go on of, I need to succeed, I need to get this, I need to grab that. It's sort of now the will of, well, how long will I do it until I stop enjoying it? Because the minute you stop enjoying it, you give it up. So I think he can get more 500s. There's not a question of his dedication over things as well. I mean, last time out, I know it's the Busch Light Clash, but he won that. And we saw in that race, the small bit you can take away was that he's certainly not afraid to get the elbows out. He was ducking and diving everywhere on the inside, kicking out of the cars and really giving some punches. And then, of course, that famous statement that his dad's told him not to do anymore. And his dad's told him off and he's not going to say, I beat your favorite driver again. Which is, I don't want to say not the best thing to do, but I thought it was quite comical. Everyone had a laugh. And I think it's just the drive to, he's happy, he's still enjoying what he's doing. And if he can get more Daytona 500s, that's a certain. But it's not a question of like he needs to do it. He's not like Kyle Busch in that respect of he needs to have one more thing to sort of round out his career. He's already got immortality. He's just seeing how long until he gets to retirement.
Yeah, well, I think Denny has the championship as kind of his last capstone to his career. Kyle Busch, of course, has the 500. I think he would probably, Kyle Busch wants the 500 more than Denny Hamlin wants the championship. I think Denny's even been on the record saying that multiple times. He'd rather retire with 60 or 65 wins and no championship than maybe only win one more race and it be for season finale Phoenix, and that gets him a championship, but he ends up with only 52 or 53 wins. Again, to answer the question of the Hall of Fame, I don't even think it's a question when you look at his resume. That's the only thing that he's missing is a championship. He's got, tons of wins in Cup, obviously several wins in Xfinity as well. Now he's entering the ownership space with 2311 Racing and Michael Jordan and Toyota. He is on a Hall of Fame path. There is no question about it. Is he running out of time to win more Daytona 500s? Yeah, he is. He's obviously, like Kyle Busch, closer to the end of his career than the beginning, but as Josh mentioned, obviously he already has 3 of them. So he's just going for, immortality when it comes to this race. I don't think he's going to catch Richard Petty's 7, but he could continue to get a little bit closer to that and maybe win 1 or 2 more before his career comes to an end. Of course, he's going to be one of my favorites to win this race. He always is with how great of a super speedway racer he is, particularly in this race, the Daytona 500. So those are my thoughts on Denny Hamlin here. Certainly the Hall of Fame resume can't be denied. And neither can his greatness at Daytona.
It's going to be really interesting to see what Denny Hamlin can do at Daytona. Question in the chat room from Brother JP. Is the race postponed? Unfortunately, it is due to weather, but it'll be Monday tomorrow on Fox. And, of course, we'll have that on our tracker here. And, of course, Ben on Grid Encore, they'll be recapping that. Be sure to subscribe to us so you don't miss Grid Encore and all of our wonderful Grid programs coming up this week. Now, one of the big things we're going to be talking about, I bet on Encore a lot, the Truck Series, the Xfinity Series one-day run and ARCA. But the Truck Series, that definitely raised some questions about all the crashes. And then the ARCA event, where, as mentioned earlier, we did see a big one occur on lap 4. Now, Ben, overall, we know we're going to be recapping everything on Grid Encore. But considering how even the 500, we see not only just the big one strike late in the race, but as early as lap 15 in 2021, when Christopher Bell pushed Eric Almirola just wrong, took out a bunch of cars early on in the race. So I'll start with you, Jackson, for this question. At what point does the big one become the nature of the beast, where that's part of super speedway racing, to, okay, the drivers, they're not showing respect for each other, and this is just getting out of hand?
I think unfortunately that's just part of the super speedway racing game. I wish it wasn't, but it is. But I think that's also what makes super speedway racing what it is that you're kind of waiting at any time that everything's going to explode into a mess, and trying to be prepared for that moment. I think some of it comes down to driver respect for each other, but that's just kind of overall aggression, and I think it's the same stuff that you see on other weeks. It's just amplified because of how tight everybody is in a pack together. But yeah, I think it's just part of the super speedway racing game, unfortunately.
Yeah, we saw it, didn't we? That truck race that took, 6 hours to actually finish? It was insane. I was watching it. Well, I had insomnia as well with all the sleep schedule changes, so I was watching it. And then we got to the last lap, I thought, oh, hello. And then it happened in ARCA, so I was like, oh, okay, never mind. So it was like, oh, great, big ones, big ones, big ones. So on that front, we even had a big one in the duel, which we were kind of expecting. We got through the first duel without one, only a single caution. And then duel 2 just sort of exploded like it always was going to. So I don't think it is the question of the respect, but these are NASCAR drivers. Once they get into the swing of it, it's all out war every single week, and there's no respect between them. They will bump each other, they will push each other, and I think it was even Denny Hamlin, wasn't it, in the second duel when he came up and chopped off one of the other cars, and everyone was saying that was too late. That was way too late. That could have caused a massive accident. So there's no respect out there. It is going to be sort of the best, but where do you go? If you're at the front, it could happen there, as we saw in the ARCA. It could happen in the middle, as we saw in the trucks, and it could happen at the back, like we saw in the Cup and the duels. So there's no perfect place to be in this race. So 500 miles is basically with your lucky underwear, your toes crossed, your fingers crossed on the steering wheel, and then down the back straight, just one hand off the wheel, either covering up the air vent or just saying to the drivers with fingers I can't use on air, don't you dare do anything stupid by the time we get to the next turn. So there's no respect. It's just all out war and shouting at each other. And that's what we all love about it as well. Anything can happen in oval racing.
Yeah, well, I think it's a combination of both. Somebody could lose a tire leading the race in front of the pack, and then, going into turn 1, that's, that will wad up the whole pack right there. You could also throw a bad block if you're leading the race and do the same thing. And that maybe if you do that on lap 4 is a lack of respect. If you do that on lap 200 or the final lap of the 7th overtime restart that we're going to have, because that's the nature of how these things seem to go these days, then maybe you might be able to be forgiven a little bit more for that, because, you're trying to win the race. But certainly if that happens in stage 1, there's going to be a lot of finger pointing that happens there. So, I think that's really ultimately, the earlier it happens in the race, I think ultimately, makes it more likely that it's a lack of respect as opposed to just the nature of the beast. Sometimes a part breaks on your car. You lose power in the middle of the pack. That can be something that's out of your control. But, as we see more and more these days, I think, one of the few drawbacks that we've had to the safety innovations, of this sport, is that I think maybe particularly the younger drivers, Ty Gibbs wasn't even alive when Dale Earnhardt Sr. was killed in this race. So, I think that the younger generation in particular, which you see more of in ARCA and in trucks, and to a lesser extent Xfinity as well, they maybe feel more invincible and like there's not as much riding on the line, especially if, you have a pay driver that's, got a sponsor that will, cut whatever checks need to be cashed. That maybe they feel like there's ultimately less at risk to make those moves, and then that leads to the respect issue getting them more out of hand. So it's an interesting conversation. I'm sure we could continue to go on about how it affects the sport as a whole these days, but particularly at super speedway racing. But I think ultimately it is still a combination of both, because sometimes there's just nothing you can do when you're running that fast, that tightly packed together.
I think you bring up a good point about how these younger drivers, that crash between Austin Dillon to get his first Daytona 500 and Eric Almirola, that was scary. And I totally am convinced personally that if that was prior to the safer barrier and everything, I think a lot of people would have been really critical, and that is not how we race. But now with the safer barrier, the safer cars and everything, this is just part of racing, as they say. And as we've heard some people say, I got to do what it takes to win. That's always seems to be pushing more and more. The respect level just seems to be changing over time with the younger drivers. Ty Gibbs, as you mentioned, many have been critical during his career in the Xfinity level. And then recently, him and Logano were going at it at the Busch Light Clash. Carson Hocevar, he got a lot of attention in the Truck Series finale for the wrong reasons, got called out by some drivers on social media even. He'll be starting ninth, John Hunter Nemechek 10th. He's been around before in a Ford. Now he's with Toyota. Zane Smith, he's coming up 14th. And Noah Gragson, he's back after missing half the year. We know him and Ty Gibbs go back, and he has a record of, I believe, Road America causing that crash, which NASCAR penalized him for. So, Josh, starting with you, any concerns that these drivers might be more likely to race, as we said, too aggressive, lack of respect, and cause some unhappy tempers during or after the race?
I think Ben might be right about his stage one caution, with all of those starting right in the middle of the pack. It's not exactly the greatest nerve relaxer in the paddock, is it? That we're going to have drivers who have been called into question for their driving etiquette over the past couple of years right there in the center. And if it I'm surprised Bubba's not on that list, to be fair, as well. We saw especially late last year how much he was getting involved in things with this. So I think there's always concern with reckless drivers, and it's the same across any motorsport. We all know them by name, don't we? So it's a risk that you have to take, but you sometimes see it, and especially in NASCAR more than other, the not the ego, but the frustration breaks through, and it goes right away to the end of it, doesn't it? And it comes into it. It boils over at the end of the race. They're on pit road. It's usually very hot, hot in the car, hot out the car, tempers running, and just one wrong word, and it's punching everywhere. And I would say it's more likely after the race than during the race, because at the 500, your mind does go, this is a big one. And it's the same when we get to the playoffs as well. And they all go, right, this is a big one. We can't do this now. We can't do this now. There's other things to think about. But at the Daytona 500, it's extra because everyone's got a chance to win. So they'll wait, and then there'll be a fight afterwards as well. Car parking lot, everyone there. Fox will be on the TV cameras, missing it all as usual. But we'll be there. We'll see it all. They're selling tickets already.
Well, I think the most famous fight in NASCAR history happened after something that happened on the final lap of this race in 1979. So it's certainly not out of the question. But, Josh, like you mentioned, those drivers in particular starting in the middle of the pack, it's certainly not a recipe for a clean start to the race, I would say, based on the reputation that some of those guys have. So, we'll see. I would hope that, Hocevar and Gibbs in particular, the two youngest in the field, could, maybe show a little bit of maturity at the start of the race and not do anything quite so silly that causes a massive accident in the first stage. But I would say there are certainly have to be some concerns based on how, especially how the truck and ARCA races have gone on Friday night. I would hope that the Cup Series could be a little bit more well behaved, but again, we'll just have to wait and see. I think the Xfinity Series as well might set a tone for the kind of attitude that we're going to get during the Cup Series race as well. So it'll be interesting to watch it all play out tomorrow.
Oh.
Mike's gone. I know that feeling very well, Jackson. When you've got no microphone and completely lost commentary as well. That's happened on a few occasions as well.
Yeah, technical difficulties, way it goes with live television, but just the way it goes. Hopefully you get your microphone up running soon because it's going to be pick a winner. One of the things I got to say before we start pick a winner, gentlemen, there is an Applebee's across the street from Daytona International Speedway. If you know that reference about we'll meet at the Applebee's parking lot and fight, outside turns 3 and 4, there is an Applebee's over there. So it's going to be one of those things. I got to agree with you. The tempers are going to be up. I think if we have a big one early, like some of us have predicted, the main concern will be there's going to be fighting afterward because you just ruin everyone's race, especially if it's early before the first round of pit stops and you take them out. So it's going to be really interesting to see all that happens. And one of the big things, we encourage everyone to participate and pick a winner. As you see, the leaderboard has a little bit of a different layout. So the red numbers in red, that is the overall standing for pick a winner. Blue numbers, as for months, each will have the most talent. Ever get the most get Grid Network stickers. Of course, that's for people that are not part of the Grid Network. So if you're a viewer, you subscribe, participate and pick a winner, you could win a sticker at the end of the month, even if you join late because there's the monthly challenge. And overall, try to get the big prize at the end of the year because we still have over 100 races across the Grid Network to cover this year. So with that said, we're going to start off with Jackson, assuming the microphone is up and running again, or pick a winner. Who are you going with?
All right, yeah, we're back now. I am going. I started the week kind of on a Toyota train. They won the duels. I don't know if they can sweep the week. I'm feeling Team Penske. I'm going with Ryan Blaney for the Daytona 500, right off the championship.
I have a spare mic if you want one. I will go for the very boring choice of the pole sitter Joey Logano, just because how quick he was in qualifying. I know it's very early to say that. It was the first one on track. They only had a 50 minutes to practice, but not wouldn't be doing anything, and Danny Hamlin was fastest in that. But I'm going to go with Joey Logano.
Joey Logano for Jack. You're cutting in a little out and in.
All of us here.
One of those deals. We got Logano in. For me, my pick is going to be a surprise to some, but he has won here before, and I think he's going to do it. Eric Jones is going to take the number 43 to victory lane in the Daytona 500.
That's an iconic number, but of course I'm going to say another iconic number in this sport. The only number with more wins than the number 43 is the number 11. That's Denny Hamlin. He's going to get the job done and get his 4th Harley J. Earl Trophy tomorrow.
And in the chat room, Adam has picked Denny Hamlin. Kobe has picked Chase Elliott. We got a message from Behind the Mic. Hi, everyone. Very depressed we're not racing. Thank you for keeping me company as I mope around the house. Definitely happy that we were able to bring some cheer, and we know so many fans are bummed that we're not racing today. Just the way it goes, unfortunately, when Mother Nature steps in. But remember, Monday on Fox, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, noon Alaska time. If you want to race on noon, there's your little caveat. They're going to be raining, and the weather does look a lot better. We want to thank all of our Patreon investors, Con the Show, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew for helping us keep on the air, investing in the Grid Network. If you want, you could do Buy Me a Cup of Coffee. You could even do a cup of coffee for a particular member of the Grid Network team. Just message it in your email or super chat who is going for it. They'll thank you on the air, and we'll give the funds to them. So if we need more cameras, more microphones, we could definitely help that occur. And follow us on social media. Instagram, Twitter, Threads, and especially right here on YouTube. Hit the bell icon, subscribe, because we're going to be on the air again after the Daytona 500 for Grid Encore, where they're going to recap all the events at Daytona from the ARCA, Trucks, Xfinity, and Cup Series Daytona 500. Wednesday, Grid Tonight, Kobe, Josh, they'll be on the air to recap all the big news from around the motorsports world. Ben and I will be on the Women in Motorsports with Isha Azim. So we'll be talking about all the female racers from this weekend and, of course, any F1 Academy news. Then we'll do it all over again next Saturday, our normal time for Grid Life pre-race for the NASCAR Cup Series at Atlanta Motor Speedway. So we want to thank everyone for tuning in. Be sure to share, subscribe, and for Jackson Todd, Joshua Birch, Ben Schneider, I'm Joe Samaniego. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time and enjoy the races.